Welcome to this episode of Your Lifestyle is Your Medicine. Today on the show, we have Allie Cass. Now, Allie is a nutrition coach, personal trainer, and fitness coach. She's come on an amazing journey in her own life that's incorporated being a college athlete, being a natural bodybuilder, and now helping women reach their health and fitness goals. Today, she's going to share with us some top tips on how people can make that transition from feeling overweight, unhealthy, bloated, and demotivated to having the physique that they want. So this is going to be a really good episode for people who are looking to make a change using lifestyle medicine, nutrition, and fitness coaching as part of their lives. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Edward.
Hey, I'm so excited for you to share your experience on taking women through transformational journeys, that not just in their bodies, but in their minds and their outlook in life as well. And when doing a bit of research on you, I understand that there are these common mistakes that women make when they're trying to change their body. And I want to know, how did you figure out these common mistakes, and how did you start working with women on these body transformations?
That is a great question. Like many people in this industry, I really started as a client, right? So I grew up as an athlete, but I was never taught how to nourish my body properly, whether that was through proper nutrition, proper self-care, stress management, emotional and mental health, which is something that I feel in the last probably 5 to 6 years has just really become a very important topic.
Mm-hmm.
So despite the fact that I was an athlete, I had, very unhealthy habits, and not the best mindset around myself and my body. When I graduated college, my mom was actually diagnosed with stage 3 brain cancer, and it was terminal. So I moved across the country, became one of her primary caregivers. And that was the first time in my life that I really started to think about health and longevity, because my mom was the kind of person who never got sick her entire life, maybe had one cold while I was growing up. I really started to sit and ask those questions of why does someone get a diagnosis like that, who's never been sick, who's otherwise pretty healthy. And I really started on this path of researching everything I could about health, right? Holistically, what does that mean? Nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, environmental toxins. And eventually that led me into a place where I was doing so much research on the mind-body connection and how unresolved emotions, traumas, experiences in life that we hold on to energetically, how that actually manifests at a physiological level. And so it was in that process of being her caregiver through basically the last year of her life, and then taking a good hard look at myself after she passed and realizing that I don't feel the way I want to feel. I don't look the way I want to feel. I'm not happy in my body. And I knew at that point in time, I was way too young. I just graduated college. So I'm like, I'm not supposed to feel this way yet, which, plot twist, no one's ever supposed to feel that way. So I really started on that journey, and I hired my first coach, and she helped me get that physical transformation, which was wonderful. But in that process, I realized there was so much more for me, both, internally when I'm looking at my health, but also emotionally, mentally, and how that plays into the bigger picture of our life. Because I'm a firm believer that anything that you do in health and fitness should be with the ultimate goal of enhancing your life. It should not take away from it, because life honestly is really short. And I don't think that there's any other way to live other than by feeling your best. So that is the journey that I went on that has, brought me into this line of work. And it was through those realizations and through my own experiences that I realized that health is so much deeper than what we see on the surface.
Totally. So I want to go back a little bit with so you just left college. What did you play at college? You said you're a college athlete.
I played basketball in college. Yeah. I didn't play for the duration of my term there, but right. I was, went in as an athlete.
So went in as an athlete, your mother is terminally ill, and you're researching what does it all mean, essentially? How can someone who your eyes was fit and healthy? Now, did you ever sort of put a link to anything she was doing in her life to her brain tumor?
Not necessarily from a, something that's clinically been researched to be correlated to that. But knowing my mother just having, you know, a lot of her personality traits myself that I have from her. I know that she was very high stress. She was go, go, go. She was one of those people who did not have the ability to just kind of like sit down and do nothing. That was very hard for her. And she also had a lot of grief. She never really talked about this, but I know that she had a lot of guilt and grief around the loss of her mother. And my grandmother actually lived with us, and there was, once my grandmother passed, I know that she felt really guilty. Like, you know, I should have been around for her more. I should have done this. So I know that there were emotions that were harbored. I'm sure they were not, you know, thoroughly processed and let go of. And then she was also kind of the caregiver for our entire family. So my father was still alive, in decent health, but not great health. So she was the breadwinner. She was the one who worked. She was the one who kind of was the glue that held everything together. So she really was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Mm-hmm. And, you know, knowing now what I know about the impacts of stress on our health and also the way that emotions play into our biology, I'm not necessarily saying that caused, you know, her cancer, but I definitely know that there were things under the surface going on.
Interesting. Yeah, it's more kind of fringe research, but there is some research to say that some cancers in certain areas of the body can be related to certain things that have happened during that person's life. And there's one thing called German New Medicine, and they seem to have mapped out that, you know, stomach cancer is mainly to do with anger, and lung cancer to do with a shock on your life, and breast cancer to do with people leaving in your life or people dying. Brain tumors, I don't know how they classify it. Unfortunately, that's why I was interested to see if you came across anything. Okay, so you've done this research, and you as a 20-something-year-old are not feeling particularly good. And that is when you're in your prime, right? That's when you're meant to be feeling fantastic. So what did this trainer that you hired, what did this coach do with you?
The first coach that I had, she was actually the one that talked me into going into bodybuilding and competing. I thought it was a horrible idea. I had no interest, and the thought of standing on stage in front of people, essentially judging my physique, was like totally not up my alley. I don't honestly remember how she talked me into it, but I remember at that point in time really feeling like I needed a goal to latch onto, because I'd been an athlete my entire life. I'd been a student. You know, there was always that carrot in front of me that I was going toward. And I didn't feel at that point in time that I really had that. And so the athlete in me was like, okay, I need something that I'm competing for. And I just said, fine. So she helped me transform my nutrition. She took a very holistic approach, which I very much appreciate now looking back, because I know that not everybody in the industry is quite like that. She just helped me transform the way that I ate. She gave me a structure of fitness to follow that also, you know, not only transformed the way that I looked, but I felt amazing. I felt strong. I felt capable. I felt confident. And she provided the tools for me to kind of transform my body. And then, you know, after that, the rest was up to me.
So let's go into, you're going from this college athlete, 20-something, to like natural bodybuilding and going up on stage in a bikini, tanned and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So what did that feel like, having that subjective sort of, people sort of looking at you and judging you on whatever it is that they judge? I don't know.
You know, it's funny because in the moment, it wasn't, there was never any doubt in my mind that I, you know, didn't look good, or I wasn't proud of my appearance, regardless of if I placed or what the judges thought of me. It was very empowering for me at that time to see how my body could transform and how it could respond to proper nutrition, to workouts, to just having that discipline and that dedication to the process. So for me, it was very empowering. Now, I was like scared out of my pants before I, you know, got up there. I was like shaking. So I was very nervous both times that I competed, but it was very empowering. And everybody that I competed with was very nice and supportive. So it was one of those things where I never once felt, because I didn't get first or, you know, whatever, that I wasn't good enough. But I do think that being in that place and being in that kind of shape, I always tell people, like, the hardest thing was after the show, right? Like when you're no longer looking like you're walking out on stage. And that's where the mindset and kind of the mental trip ups start to happen for a lot of people.
Interesting. Because it's such a, it's a minority sport, I'm
Mhm.
guessing, and females within that sport are, I guess, another minority. And from, I don't know much about it, but other people watching from the outside might say, why would you want to do that? But for you, it seemed to be just the right thing.
It was definitely the right thing at that point in my life. Now I've thought about going back and competing
Oh,
again, and it is a goal that I have at some point, but it really has to be the time and place. And for me at that point in my life, the gym really was my therapy. It was my
yeah.
time. For me, it was when I didn't have to answer to anyone. I could take out my anger and my frustration at, what I was experiencing in life, and I could put it into the weights. And so for me at that point, it was like almost like going to church.
Mhm.
Essentially, it was very therapeutic for me. But yeah, it's all about, what that place in life looks like.
Wow. So when I did exercise and sports science, way back when, 20 something
Mhm.
years ago, we had this book called Sound Fossil Muscle. And it was written by an Oxford professor who had self-confidence problems, but he ended up going into bodybuilding and becoming very confident. And not only just
Mhm.
going into bodybuilding, he took this hugely academic approach to it, and he ended up winning tons of things. But the bit that stands out to me is that he said before these guys go on stage, and this wasn't natural bodybuilding, they were taking every type of steroid they possibly could. Before they go on stage, they are closest to death than they ever are like prior to or afterwards. And so I look at what those guys are doing, like the Formula One sort of racing. It's like right on the edge. And that bit of research kind of trickles down into the rest of the public consciousness. And do you feel like that the stuff that you learned there was kind of elite, and the stuff that you teach is it takes pieces of that, or like tell me how that works, your experience? How do you bring that experience back into with your clients now?
That's a great question. I'm also glad that you mentioned Formula One. I love Formula One. It has been my recent little hobby that I watch on the side. So, anyways, I do think that those approaches are somewhat advanced, right? Like most of the women, for instance, that I coach don't necessarily want to look like a bodybuilder. Of course, they
Mhm.
want to, be more toned, they want more muscle, they want to lose fat, all of those things, but they don't really want to necessarily look like that. So I do think that those strategies are appropriate for those scenarios, but not necessarily for the general public. I don't think it's hard to adhere to, for one. So I'm a big proponent of the best strategy is going to be one that someone adheres to, because obviously if we're not following a plan, it's not going to work. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't have the discipline and don't want to adhere to the things that you have to adhere to get in that kind of shape. And that's perfectly fine. It's not for everyone. And it honestly takes a physiological toll, especially if you're, doing that years over years over years. So I don't think that everyone is cut out for that, for sure.
Mhm.
But taking just kind of, the principles of resistance training for me, when I work with women, obviously, while I was competing, tracking macros, tracking my food, that was all a very big part of what I had to do. I have clients now who thrive under that structure. They want that. They want the data, they want to see the metrics, and that's great. So we can apply those types of principles to working with that more of a lifestyle client or general population. Other clients don't, and that's okay. So, there are tidbits that you can take from, the experience in bodybuilding. Obviously, a lot of people, at least that I work with, come to me with that aesthetic goal being kind of, the overarching theme. And then it's once we dive in further that we find out, okay, there's some level of dysfunction maybe going on in the body, or, maybe they really have some emotional things that we need to just address. So I think being able to take that approach, but also understanding that that's not the end all be all, and helping someone get to that goal of true transformation is a lot deeper than just
Mhm.
looking a certain way while you're standing on a stage.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you feel like a lot of people make some mistakes when they're approaching sort of weight loss or trying to get fit. And one of those is that they're not addressing the root cause of their issues. Do you find those issues, you mentioned like dysfunction, do you find those issues are physiological or sometimes mental or spiritual? Where those issues manifest?
All of the above.
Yeah.
But I find that, at least in a lot of the clients I work with, a lot of times there is dysfunction on a physiological level, but if we go even further, if we, practice that exercise where we ask why 5 times,
Yeah.
a lot of times we can, trace at least some of that dysfunction back to, very stressful situations, whether it's they're chronically stressed because they're an executive at a corporate company and they're constantly, having to be connected and they're constantly putting out fires, and that's just like constantly a trigger for them. They're living in this fight or flight state. For other people, it could be a divorce or a breakup, something that really emotionally has triggered them, and they're just living in that constant state of kind of stress response over time. So to answer that question, both. But I also think that for everything that we see physiologically, most times there is some sort of mental, emotional, life circumstance component that has potentially played into that.
All right, so let's workshop out a client where they could be an imaginary client or a real client that you've worked with, where let's say they're early 40s and they want to get in shape, lose some weight, maybe lose some baby weight. Where would you start with that process of finding out what is the thing that's holding them back, or what is the thing that's going to make them do it? Like what's their kind of hook?
That's a great question. I currently have a pretty lengthy intake process, and I ask a ton of questions in my intake form. And I also do consultations first, just to make sure people are a good fit. I'm a good fit for them. They're a good fit for me. And in that process of having that conversation with them, I really try to spend that time actually getting to know them, not just saying, what is your goal? Okay, can you afford this? Like, it's not about that. It's about who are you? What is the challenge that you're up against? Why is that a challenge? What have you gone through? Where are the sticking points? And so I'm able to get a gauge a lot of times from those conversations on whether is it truly that they make food choices that are not conducive to their goals, or they're not making time for exercise, or, where that is. And I get to know, what they do for work. Do they have a family? What is that family dynamic like? What's their social support like? And so I'm able to also see what that looks like outside of the traditional kind of health and fitness realm. And then also just talking with someone, if you pay attention, you can get a really good feel for their personality. So I can tell my type A ladies, like because I'm like, I'm type A right here, I see you. And I can just tell, I'm like, okay, so you're one of those go people that has a hard time slowing down. So I'm able to get a gauge of that when I talk to them. But in that intake process, we look at things like, what is your diet currently like? What is your exercise like? What are some health challenges that you are either experiencing now, you've experienced in the past, all of that. It's almost like when you go to your doctor and you have that intake form, except it's a little more wellness based. And to be honest, I ask them questions like, what do you see when you look in the mirror? How do you feel? What is that? What are the things that you're saying to yourself? Whether it's a very conscious thought or something that maybe is a little more rooted in the subconscious. And sometimes, I'll get women who are like, hey, it's going to take me a couple of days to fill this out because I want to ponder on that. And I'm like, that's great. So I just dive right into them and, see what their responses are. And a lot of times we start taking the approach, obviously we're going to tweak the biggest things first that are going to move the needle the most. And oftentimes that is a little bit of nutrition, getting them on some sort of regular structured exercise plan. And then through that coaching and that communication and collaboration, we start kind of working a little bit more on the mindset and the emotional components.
So what do you find is a stumbling block then? So once you've gone through all that and you've got an idea of what the client needs, do you notice something that trips people up?
I think one big thing is people get so confused about what they should do. There's so many different dietary theories and so much advice and so much of no, you should do this, or no, HIIT is the best. No, low intensity, this diet, whatever, supplements, everything. It's like a cycle, right? We have everything is a fad at some point in time. So I think that a lot of people in general, but women specifically, are bombarded with these messages. And so they try this for a week, they try that for a week. Their cousin Sally had success with this. And it's confusing. It's confusing for me as a practitioner sometimes. And I know this stuff, I've studied this stuff and I've implemented it. So I can't even imagine, being in kind of the Gen Pop area and just trying to decipher all that myself. So I think people get confused. I think we have information overload in all aspects of life. And I don't know about you, but personally, when I am overwhelmed like that, I tend to shut down. So I think that, people, they try things, they don't either stick to them for long enough, or it's not the right course of action for them, because I get that question a lot as far as like, what's the best diet, what's the best fitness plan, all of this. And honestly, I could make a use case for or against almost every single, dietary theory or every single exercise plan. So there's no one size fits all. And I think that is a mistake that a lot of people make, is because they don't understand the nuances. They don't necessarily understand where they're at and where they want to go. And so they just try something. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and like hoping something sticks. And a lot of times it doesn't, and it leaves a sour taste in the mouth. And then they have this bad experience with, with nutrition or with fitness and all of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll say this for my listeners as well. I trained with a company called Hinsa out of Finland to do lifestyle performance executive coaching. And they're actually a Formula One provider. Awesome. So this is why I wanted to mention it. In order to work as a driver's sort of physical therapist or a driver's trainer, you pretty much have to go through this one company, Hinsa. They've got the monopoly. There's a few other companies, and one run by a very good osteopath called Gemma Fisher, but she has her own thing. But this company does 85% of the F1 drivers. And so they have a sleep specialist that runs the F1 sort of season, as you could imagine. And he actually has an app, and it's called Time Shifter. So I recommend that to all my clients. So if you're listening, Time Shifter is an app that helps you deal with jet lag all throughout the world. It's pretty cool. So they've got a specialist in jet lag. They've got a specialist in nutrition. They've got a specialist, tons of specialists in strength and endurance. So during the course is, I think it was like 40 weeks long. Got to the nutrition part and I was like, okay, here we go. This is stuff coming right out of Formula One. We're going to learn some cool stuff. Completely sort of vanilla advice. And I'm like, that's it? And she's like, that's it. That is the advice. But when you go into the magazines or onto social media, you see the two extremes of advice, right? You see the vegan stuff, you see the carnivore stuff. And what I find is my clients are like, well, I heard about this or I heard about that. And I'm like, well, what about just some veggies, a little bit of protein? What about just normal food? And they're like, well, no, that can't work. And it's like, yes, it does work for like 95% or even more of everybody. And those ones that shout the loudest are definitely the fringes. I mean, that's my opinion on it. Is that similar to how you think? Or
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's definitely foundations that apply to almost everyone. And it's not sexy though. That's the thing. And I think, I don't know if it's like this online social media space that we live in now, but everything is so polarizing. And unfortunately, that's what gets headlines. That's what makes people click. And so I think that has like perpetuated this issue so much more. But in reality, like the foundations are where it's at, and it's boring, it's mundane, but it's what gets the job done. And then everything else from there is just icing on the cake. But I have clients every now and then too that are like, what do you think about sea moss as a supplement? And I'm like, personally, I haven't taken it, done some research on it. I don't think it's going to hurt you, but like, if you're asking me where you should put your money, that's not what I'm going to tell you to get right off the bat. So there is a lot of that for sure.
I haven't heard of sea moss, but yeah, no, you're right. It's the kind of the not sexy part of it. And that's one thing. I mean, this podcast is called Your Lifestyle is Your Medicine. And there are biohackers out there that make the headlines for, drinking X amount of cups of coffee a day or creating these amazing lines of supplements. And the word hacker, I don't think kind of works for me. It's like a bioharmonist. That means we need to sleep properly. We need to sort of live within our more evolutionary roots. So like overhead lights after a certain time is probably not a good idea. Eating packaged food and high sugar, not a good idea. But none of this is going to be like Instagram retweetable, And this is, part of this podcast is to interview people and ask them, what they're doing and how they're doing it. And the more people I interview, the more it comes back. It's like, well, sleep is important. Don't eat sugar. That's important. And, I've had doctors on here. I've had researchers on here. And it's none of this stuff that we see on social media. It really is just the fundamentals. But having said that, I want to sort of dive back into how you work with your women. Let's say you have a woman in her 40s who wants to lose a little bit of weight, get more toned, but they've got a couple of kids, their husband's busy, and they can't find the time to go to the gym. Like that must be a something you've come across before. This is what I come across a lot.
Yes.
Like, how do you work with someone like that?
So I do honestly have a lot of those women, they're carrying everything.
Yeah.
So what I do with them, and that's why I'm very big on trying to take as much of a customized, individualized approach as we can, because, what I have to take care of in a day might be different than what you have to take care of in a day. And so I'm very realistic about that with clients. So everything that we do, let's say it is a workout plan, they can't make it to the gym. Great. Do they have a space at home? I have a whole list of very basic equipment, very low cost, doesn't take up a lot of space. We try to get them to have at least some sort of setup that's going to be conducive for them. And then we structure it around their day. If someone can only work out 3 times a week, great. I'd rather them work out 3 times a week than 0 times a week. Mm-hmm. So we try to make it fit. I've had women who are like, hey, I just had a baby a year ago. And so I like 30 minutes is my cap. Great. How can we be as efficient as possible and still get you to where you want to go? It might take a little bit longer, and that's okay. As long as we set that expectation and we're making those steps, we do what we got to do. As far as other things, I've encouraged clients before, and I have a lot of, I don't know if I think it's the women thing, but it's, the mom guilt. Like, I do actually have the time, but I feel like I should be spending it with my kids, or I feel like I should be doing we should all over ourselves all the time. So, I've encouraged clients before to, incorporate your kids into the workout. Like, if I have a client right now and she has 4 kids and they're all like, they're still pretty young, but they aren't babies anymore. So, she was doing a core finisher the other day, and her daughter came in and needed something. So she was like, hey, why don't you plank with me? So include your kids. Like, it's also a great way to be the example, show them what it looks like to live a healthy lifestyle, to prioritize yourself, because I think just as much or just as important as it is to spend time with your kids or to take care of what you need to take care of, it's also important to show them that it's important to take care of yourself and to show up for yourself. So, I'm like, if you want to take them for a walk, or you want to, incorporate them, if they want to, work out with you, whatever it is, like, get the family involved, make it fun, anything that we can do to just make it engaging and make it something that really enhances their lifestyle, as opposed to being like another thing we have to cross off the list for the day.
Yeah. That thing with the prioritize yourself. There's a personality type that I find goes male and female, but it's like, I'm going to put everyone else first. And, it's getting the house ready, it's looking after the kids, or it's doing whatever you do for work and putting work ahead of everything else because you want to take care of that. And the last person on your list is yourself. And I find this, for me, those are the hardest people I find to work with, because we have to sort of go right deep down into why they don't prioritize themselves. Mm-hmm. And with my female clients who are mothers, I'm like, hey, look, if you're sick or injured or whatever, you're not going to help anybody. And it's only when I frame it like that do they go, oh yeah, I see, I really should be taking care of myself in order to take care of other people.
Yeah. I call that the martyr syndrome.
It is the martyr syndrome.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know if I might have made that up. I could have taken that, so I'm not going to claim that was original, but I think a lot of people, a lot of women especially too, we're almost taught that we need to put everybody else first, and that gives us some sort of like accomplishment, like, oh, I did this for them. And I think it also comes back to, especially with women, to worthiness. Like, do you feel that you're worthy of putting yourself before that project or that client or that thing, whatever else it is? And so that's a conversation that I talk about with my clients a lot. And if not, that's okay. But why is that? And what can we do to start building that?
You're right. There's a great book by a guy called Dr. Sano, and it's called Beating Lower Back Pain. And he actually lays out that personality type who they actually get more back pain than other people. So type A people who are go, who are like bulls in a china shop, get stuff done, don't suffer from back pain. It's the supporters, the cheerleaders, or the martyrs, as you say. They're the ones that get back pain. And the sort of what's her name, Caroline Myss, sort of why certain things hurt in your body is sort of more of an emotional connection, is because there's no support, and they think that they may be in a situation where no one's supporting them, and therefore their back pain, which is their support, it's their like it's the foundation, is the thing that gives. So I see a lot of people like that. But
I love that.
just a funny aside. My now ex-wife, she wasn't like that. She was the other way around. She was very much looked after herself. So much so, we were driving back from town one day after work. We used to work in the same place, we had our own business together. And we pull up at this person's house, and I'm like, "What are we doing here?" She said, "I'm gonna go in and get it's like some sort of therapy session." And I was like, "Cool. So what should I do?" And we were in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, "She's like, do what you want. You know, well, I'll be about an hour." So I was like, okay, too far to drive anywhere. So I just kind of sat in their living room while she had a session and read something on my computer. So the next day I thought, I'll flip the tables. So we're driving back. I was driving and I drove into the gym and I parked the car. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just going to go to the gym for an hour." She's like, "No, you're not. You get back in this car and we're going home." And I was like, I think I have the martyr syndrome, and she had the whatever the opposite is, take care of number one syndrome. But now she's an ex-wife, so that might be part of it.
Yeah.
So let's get back on the topic here. So what can you give? What advice can you give people if they are saying to themselves, "Okay, now's the time. I've got to make a change. I've been putting off stuff for years. I know I should be eating better. Maybe I've been having kids, or because you mainly work with women, is that right?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe
right.
I've had kids, or maybe I've put my career ahead of myself, or whatever it is, and they've got to an age where they're not feeling healthy, they're bloated, they're slightly overweight. What is the first step that you would recommend they take?
I like to recommend, I guess, if somebody already has that level of awareness, that's typically my first thing is like, let's build that awareness around, hey, I do need help. I am ready. But if they're already at that level and that space, seeking out help, or if you do have some experience, if you do have that framework where you kind of know what to do, just take one step. What is that quote by Lao Tzu that a 1,000-mile journey out with a single step. Yeah. And I do think it's very easy. I mean, I've been in this space, whether it's in health and fitness or my business, but it's easy to look at 10 steps down the road and get really overwhelmed and then just shut down. So just taking one step at a time and focusing on that step and on that process. I like to tell my clients, like, okay, what's your big vision goal? Like, let's set that, let's visualize it, let's put it out there, and then forget about it. Like, don't sit there and like micromanage it, don't harp on it. Like, we know what we're working towards, so let's focus on the next step, the next action. Like, keep your focus on that smaller piece and not necessarily the entire staircase. So I think, for women, if you're ready, or even if you're not, because there's really never the right time to start. The right time to start was probably yesterday. So the next best time is right now.
Yeah.
So, seek help from somebody that, you resonate with, someone that you feel like is going to be a good fit for you. If you don't know what you're doing, if you need that accountability, you need that structure. And, it's likely that person, might not be the person you need for forever. And that's okay. Get as far as you can go, get what you need, and then, continue the journey. But that's what it is. It's a journey. And again, that's not sexy. That's not going to sell headlines saying health and fitness is a lifelong journey. It's much sexier to say, like, get shredded abs in 6 weeks. But that's not the reality of it. So, just understanding that it is a process, and anyone who looks like they have it totally figured out is still on their own journey too. So.
Okay, that's great advice. So you and me and people like us working in the space are competing to some extent with these Instagram influencers, where get shredded up in 6 weeks is what they sell. What do you think when you see these influencers promoting like these fitness products that seem impossible? Do you think it's all smoke and mirrors? Do you think there's some truth in it?
I think it depends, which again is not a very sexy answer. I think that a lot of it is, blowing some smoke. Again, it's a good headline. It's good for marketing. It's very capturing. Obviously, I've been in a place in my life where I would love to get shredded in 6 weeks for sure. So, I am totally, totally aware of that. I think that people can make a good amount of progress in, let's say, something like 6 weeks, but it goes back to like, how physiologically healthy are you, right? Like, I've had women who make a lot of progress up front, and that's great. And then I've had women where we have to nurture their metabolism. We work on balancing their hormones. Maybe they have some gut dysfunction going on. And like, we need to address those things before we can say, okay, let's try to go lose, 5% body fat or whatever it is that we're looking to do. So I think that like understanding, even if you don't really understand what's going on with you personally in your physiology, like understanding that all of us are at different places in our journey, we're experiencing different things, and what might work for one person as kind of a quicker route might not work for you, and that's okay. That doesn't mean there's not a route for you. That doesn't mean there's, nothing is going to work for you. But also understanding that part of the goal, I always say this, it's not necessarily about what you get at the end of the journey. When you reach your goal, it's about who you become in the process. So becoming a person that knows how to prioritize themselves, that knows how to balance their health and their fitness with all the other demands of life, that understands, okay, what is a better choice that I can make in this moment? And if I don't make it, okay, but how can I make that choice next time? So learning those skills are invaluable for having that long-term sustainable success. And that's one thing that you're not going to get in a 6-week program, an 8-week program, regardless of how great your physical results might be. And that's all fine and good, but the whole purpose is to, have this in your toolbox for your entire life.
I love it. It's sustained performance is the key. And with the Formula One coaching through Hinsa, they actually wouldn't even work with some Formula One racing drivers if their only goal was to win the world championships. They would say, nah, you got to have more than one goal, because what if you get injured? What if you get dropped? What if what if tomorrow you might not be a racing driver? And if your only goal is to become world champion, then the next day is going to feel pretty bad. So they would encourage the young, the upcoming racing drivers, even at 17, 18 years old, to think about family, to think about charities, to think about business. And they called it having like pillars to hold up the mantle of life. So if you lose one pillar, your mantle doesn't fall down. And the idea is, if you have lots of different pillars, and same with nutrition, if your nutrition is to lose a ton of water and sort of get rid of or get shredded by sort of dehydration and so on, that's not sustainable. Or to get shredded by juicing for however long, or to do excessive amounts of exercise that can't be sustained. None of those things, like you just said, are sustainable. But if you take these sort of decent foundations that have been well proven over time and research and apply them to your life, you're going to have sustained high performance. And I think that's what you're talking about, and that's what all the people who've been in this game for a while are talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the pillar concept, though. Yeah. That is very true. Yeah.
It's nice. It's a good way of thinking about things. So, Allie, how can people find out a bit more about you, and where are you online?
I am on Instagram primarily. That is my most active social channel. My handle is at Allie Cass Health. And then I also have a website, www.alliecasshealth.com. You can read more about me, my story, my program. And if you're interested, if you feel like it'd be a good fit, I'm happy to book a free health audit with whomever. And we can chat about your goals, where you're at now, where you'd like to go, and see if it's something I can help you with. And if not, I'm happy to give you some tidbits and point you in the right direction.
Nice. So you offer a free consultation to people before they work with you?
Yes. Yeah. It's important to me. I want to make sure that I truly can be the person that helps someone, and also vice versa. I think when you work with someone in the capacity that I strive to work with my clients in, and we go deep in the coaching process outside of just the fitness and nutrition. And I think that it's important that, on an energetic level, you just vibe and you resonate with one another, because I always strive with my clients to make it a safe space where they feel like they can come to me with stuff that isn't even related to their workout plan or their nutrition. It might be like something going on in their relationship or work, or, just something where they need a safe space to be held so they can get rid of that. So
I think that, coaches, be that fitness coaches or mindset coaches or lifestyle coaches, are uniquely positioned to even pick up on stuff that the medical doctors won't in those 5-10 classic medical visits. And you will be more of a health coach to one of your clients than their doctor probably ever will be.
And that's what I aspire to do. And I love collaborating with doctors as well, because, they have their model and my model is very different. And that's what allows me to form that relationship. And I can help, even giving my clients like things where they're going to their doctor and I'm saying, hey, ask them this, or, this is what I'm seeing. So this is what I would love for you to bring to their attention. And let's see how we can take what they're giving you from a medical standpoint and what we can work on with that.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ali. This has been very informative and enlightening. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you find Ali's message resonated with you. Now, remember, you can find her at alliecashealth.com. That's ALLIECASS health.com. And she actually works with people all over the world. So you don't have to be in the United States to work with her. She has people in multiple countries and multiple continents. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you press like wherever you're getting your episodes. So if it's on YouTube, just press like there and leave a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. If it's on one of the other podcast providers, please leave a star rating or a comment, because when you do those things, it really helps get my show more visibility, which means more people listen to it, which means we can spread the word of lifestyle medicine. So those things mean the world to me. I really appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next episode.